The note on my kitchen counter was written in my mother's tidy, unmistakable cursive. Just one sentence, nothing more. Sorry, sweetie. We just couldn't take care of her. For a moment, I stood frozen in my scrubs, the plastic ID badge for my ER shift still hanging from my collar. The house was silent. No laughter, no music, no little footsteps running toward me. Just silence and that damn note taped to the granite. I dropped my keys and tore through the house, calling out, "Eliza? Mom? Dad?" But every room was empty. Her backpack was gone. So was her nightlight. The unicorn blanket she refused to sleep without, gone too. I tried calling my parents. Straight to voicemail. Again and again. That's when my phone buzzed, not from them, but from a social media notification. My sister, Savannah, had posted a photo. My father in sunglasses, arm around Jackson and Madison, my niece and nephew. All of them standing on a beach in matching Hawaiian shirts, smiling with drinks in their hands. The caption read, "Surprise family trip? So lucky to have the best grandparents in the world." They'd left for Hawaii, with Savannah and her kids, while my daughter, my 8-year-old, was missing. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even breathe for a moment. I just stared at the photo. Then I picked up my phone and made the one call that would end with police pounding on their hotel room door across the Pacific. Before everything unraveled, my life was already complicated, but it was a kind of chaos I had learned to manage. I was 32, an ER nurse at Mercy Hill Hospital in St. Augustine, Florida. My shifts were long, often stretching past midnight, but the work gave me purpose. I had become skilled at guiding strangers through their worst days. I just never saw my own storm coming. Eliza was born 8 years ago, during my final semester of nursing school. Her father, Connor Davis, and I were newly married and completely unprepared. He was still finishing his business degree. We were broke, overwhelmed, and terrified. But when I held Eliza for the first time, none of that mattered. She was mine, a tiny, wriggling miracle with wispy red curls and eyes that never seemed to blink. From that moment on, I promised her everything I had. We tried to make it work. Connor took a job in marketing after graduation and quickly became obsessed with networking events, client dinners, and late-night strategy meetings. I noticed the signs before I was ready to admit them. Perfume on his shirts, missed calls from numbers saved as first names only, a distance in his eyes even when he was home. When I finally confronted him, he didn't lie. He didn't apologize either. He just said he needed more freedom. Our divorce was finalized 3 months later. He got the downtown apartment. I got primary custody and child support that came late more often than not. We settled into a rhythm, Eliza and me. Mornings were chaotic, evenings were sacred. No matter how late my shift ended, I never skipped our bedtime routine. Teeth brushed, story read, and then our brave talk, where we each shared one thing that scared us that day. Hers were usually spiders or spelling tests. Mine were more abstract, missing too much, not being enough, losing her. My parents, Douglas and Irene Rivers, lived just outside town in Palmview. My father had retired from his accounting firm with plenty of savings, and my mother, once a respected school principal, spent most of her time organizing book clubs and brunches. To outsiders, they looked like model grandparents, kind, generous, involved. But inside our family, the picture was never quite that perfect. They had a favorite, always had. Savannah, my younger sister by 4 years, could do no wrong. She'd followed the plan: college, career, perfect wedding to Bradley, a well-paid attorney. She worked part-time as an interior designer and spent most days at home with Jackson and Madison. My parents doted on them like royalty. Birthday gifts, ballet recitals, custom Halloween costumes, surprise weekend getaways. They were showered with attention and affection. Eliza and I, we were tolerated, included out of obligation, never excitement. I told myself it was subtle that I was overthinking, but even Eliza noticed. One day after Christmas, as we drove home in silence, she asked, "Mom, do Grandma and Grandpa like me the same as the other kids?" My chest tightened. I wanted to lie. I wanted to protect her, but I couldn't say yes. The signs had been there for years, like hairline cracks in a wall I pretended not to see. But once I let myself look, really look, it all became impossible to ignore. When Jackson turned 10, my parents threw him a backyard party with rented inflatables, a magician, and personalized goodie bags. Eliza's birthday had been 2 months earlier. She'd gotten a discount craft set and a half-hearted happy birthday over a dinner none of them attended. When I brought it up, Mom said she must have written the wrong date on the calendar and told me not to be dramatic. The winter recital was another slap. Madison's first ballet performance. My parents drove 3 hours, booked a hotel, and posted photos with captions like, "So proud of our little star." Eliza's piano recital was the following weekend, just 15 minutes from their house. They didn't come. Mom said they'd already RSVP'd to a neighborhood potluck. Even holidays, which were supposed to be joyful, became exercises in quiet survival. The dinner table was always lined with Jackson and Madison's favorite dishes: cheesy potatoes, honey-glazed carrots, homemade brownies. When Eliza developed a gluten sensitivity, I emailed Mom in advance, offered to bring her a separate dish. But on Thanksgiving, everything on the table was drenched in wheat, and Mom just smiled and said, "I'm sure she can find something to eat." Eliza quietly picked at plain lettuce and turkey slices while everyone else devoured rolls and stuffing. She didn't complain, but I watched her smile tighten. I saw her check out. I tried to speak up more than once. "Mom, I've noticed that you seem more involved with Savannah's kids than with Eliza." "Don't be ridiculous," she'd replied, barely looking up from folding a new wardrobe of doll clothes for Madison. "We love all our grandchildren equally. Victoria just makes it easier to be involved. She includes us more." But that wasn't true. I'd sent invitations. I'd shared school calendars. I'd called. I'd begged. The truth was I wasn't Savannah. I hadn't followed their map, hadn't married someone they approved of, hadn't lived in a 2-story house with a matching doormat and seasonal wreaths. Still, I clung to hope. I told myself they cared in their own way, that they were older, tired, overwhelmed, that it wasn't personal, until the week of the accident, until I needed help, not with favors or parties or gifts, but with something simple, with care, with love. 3 nights. That's all I asked. The call came halfway through my 3rd consecutive night shift. My legs ached, my eyes burned, and the trauma, they hadn't been quiet in 12 hours. A 5-car pileup on I-95 had filled every room in the ER. I'd just handed off my last patient when my personal phone vibrated in my pocket. The screen lit up with Eliza's school name, Pine Creek Elementary. At first, I assumed it was a schedule reminder, maybe a field trip notice. But when I answered, the voice on the other end was too serious. "Ms. Rivers? This is Mr. Fry from the front office. We noticed Eliza wasn't in school today, and no one called to excuse her absence." My breath caught. "What do you mean?" "She's with my parents. They should have dropped her off." There was a pause. "We haven't seen her this morning. We've tried calling your parents' home number, but there's been no response." I don't remember hanging up. I just remember running, out of the hospital, still half in scrubs, my badge flapping against my chest. The 15-minute drive to Palmview felt endless. I called my mom's phone. Straight to voicemail. My dad's? Same. I tried Savannah just in case. No answer. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, I knew something was wrong before I even got out of the car. Both vehicles were gone. No porch light. No signs of life. I used my spare key and burst through the front door. "Mom? Dad? Eliza?" Silence. Then I saw the paper on the kitchen counter. A single sheet lined. My mother's signature penmanship across the top. "Natalie, sorry, sweetie, we just couldn't take care of her." We've arranged for temporary placement until you're available again. You can contact Child Protective Services to make arrangements. No number, no location, no signature, just abandonment. My hands trembled as I tried dialing CPS. It took 3 transfers and nearly 20 minutes to reach someone who could even pull up a file. A woman named MS. Beltran, polite but distant, confirmed it. Yes, we have a record of a child named Eliza Rivers being placed in emergency foster care last night. The reported guardians, Douglas and Irene Rivers, requested immediate placement, citing inability to provide care and stating the mother was unavailable indefinitely. Unavailable indefinitely? I repeated, my voice cracking. I'm her mother. I was working 3 night shifts. I told them exactly when I'd be picking her up. I understand this is upsetting, ma'am, Ms. Beltran said gently. But please try to remain calm so we can verify your identity and begin the reunification process. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to drive to whatever office had processed this and demand to know how no one had checked. But instead, I did what every ER nurse is trained to do in a crisis. I breathed. I answered every question. I recited my custody paperwork from memory. I gave them my badge number, my shift reports, Eliza's medical records, her allergy prescriptions, everything. And as the sun rose over Palmview, I sat in my childhood living room, staring at the spot where my parents once kept a family photo on the mantel. It had been replaced by a candle display from Pottery Barn. It took 4 hours of non-stop phone calls, document verifications, and urgent pleas before CPS finally gave me the address. Eliza had been placed with an emergency foster family on the edge of town, people I had never met, who didn't know her, who had no idea she hated orange juice and was afraid of dogs that barked too loud. When I pulled up to the modest yellow ranch house, my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. The woman who opened the door was in her 50s, kind-eyed and calm. You must be Eliza's mom, she said softly. She's in the backyard with my husband. I stepped onto the back porch, and there she was, my daughter, sitting on a patch of grass, gently tossing a ball toward an old retriever who couldn't care less. Her shoulders were hunched, her curls messy, her eyes vacant. Eliza, I whispered. She turned. The moment her eyes met mine, she dropped the ball and ran. Her body collided with mine so hard I nearly stumbled back. She wrapped her arms around my waist and sobbed into my shirt. Mommy, I thought you weren't coming back. My knees buckled. I dropped to the ground and held her, rocking her back and forth, whispering over and over, I would never leave you. Never. I'm so sorry. I'm here now. We stayed like that for what felt like hours. Eventually, we moved inside where Mrs. Callahan, the foster mother, had prepared juice and snacks. Eliza sat beside me on the couch, clinging to my arm, afraid to let go. As she slowly began to talk, the pieces fell into place. Grandma said you needed to take care of something important, and maybe you'd need a really long break, she whispered. She packed my pajamas and my nightlight. Then they dropped me off at a building and said nice people would look after me. But I didn't want nice people. I wanted you. My throat burned. I squeezed her tighter, brushing her hair away from her flushed cheeks. They had no right to say that. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. Mrs. Callahan looked at me, eyes filled with a quiet kind of anger. When they dropped her off, they never mentioned you. Never said you were returning. They presented themselves as her guardians, said they were overwhelmed and didn't know what else to do. They lied, not only to CPS, but to Eliza. Later, while Eliza watched cartoons in the next room, I finally looked at my phone again. A notification blinked at the top of my screen. Savannah had tagged our parents in a photo. There they were on a beach in Maui. My father teaching Jackson how to snorkel. My mother building a sandcastle with Madison, matching floral shirts, champagne glasses, laughter frozen in pixels. The timestamp? 30 minutes after Eliza had been handed over to Child Protective Services. I had always considered myself calm under pressure. Years in the ER had trained me to think clearly when others fell apart. But this wasn't a stranger coding in Trauma Bay 3. This was my daughter, and someone had deliberately endangered her. For vacation. After getting Eliza settled back at the Callahan's house for the night, her favorite blanket in hand and Webster the stuffed otter tucked beside her, I stepped outside to make a call I never thought I'd need to make. Melissa Grant picked up on the second ring. She was more than my closest friend. She was also one of the sharpest family court attorneys in St. Johns County. And when I told her what had happened, I didn't even have to ask. They did what? Her voice snapped through the phone like a whip. Natalie, that's not just morally repugnant. That's criminal. I want to file a report, I said, pacing the Callahan's porch. Not just with CPS, but with law enforcement. They lied about being Eliza's guardians. They falsified information. They left her. You have every right to, Melissa said. That's child abandonment, filing a false report, and possibly custodial interference. We'll start by documenting everything. That night, I didn't sleep. I created a digital folder on my laptop. I printed screenshots, Savannah's vacation posts with timestamps proving the trip had been pre-planned for weeks. I saved the intake form from CPS, the text messages, the photos of Eliza in the foster home, and even the receipt I'd given my parents listing her allergy meds and emergency contacts. The next morning, I called Detective Harper. I had worked with him before. He handled family-related cases, and I'd seen him comfort domestic violence victims in the ER more times than I could count. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. He just listened. Based on what you're describing, he said slowly, there are definitely grounds for a formal investigation. The fact that they left the state complicates jurisdiction, but it doesn't protect them. I told him about the Maui hotel, the matching shirts, the timestamp on Savannah's post. They lied Harper, I said quietly. They told CPS I was unreachable, that I might not come back, and then they went to the beach. I'll get in touch with authorities in Hawaii, he said, but I'll need an official statement, and everything you've got. He didn't say it, but I could hear it in his tone. This case was different. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was methodical, cold. I looked back through the window, where Eliza now slept curled on the couch, her face finally peaceful. They didn't just lie about me, they tried to erase me. It happened exactly 72 hours after Eliza had been dropped at Child Protective Services. Detective Harper had coordinated with Hawaiian authorities using every scrap of evidence I'd given him. Flight confirmations, Savannah's social media breadcrumbs, hotel reservation details. Everything pointed to one place, the Oceanside Resort and Spa in Wailea, Maui. A 5-star sanctuary with oceanfront suites and an infinity pool that glowed at night. At 7:05 a.m. Hawaiian time, 3 officers from the Maui Police Department knocked firmly on the door of room 742. Security footage would later show the moment the door creaked open. My father, still in a resort bathrobe, hair uncombed, looked out with confusion that quickly twisted into alarm as Detective Barnes, the local lead, identified himself. Gerald Rivers. Barnes said evenly, "We need to speak with you and Irene Rivers regarding an incident involving your granddaughter, Eliza Rivers, and allegations of child abandonment." My father tried to shut the door. The officers didn't let him. Behind him, my mother appeared, her hair still in rollers, a silk robe cinched too tightly at the waist. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, her voice already trembling. "We made arrangements. We told them she needed care while her mother was unavailable." "You never contacted her mother," Barnes replied, holding up documentation from CPS. "You declared yourselves guardians and omitted critical custody information. Your daughter has since filed formal charges." Then the connecting door burst open. Savannah stepped in, followed by her husband Bradley, both in pajamas. The kids peeked from behind them, confused and silent. "What's going on?" Savannah demanded. "You told me Natalie knew!" She turned on them, eyes wide. "You said she approved it." "She would have made a scene," my mother whispered. "You know how she gets dramatic." Even Savannah recoiled at that. Then came the excuses. "She has special needs," my father insisted. "She's difficult, demanding. We weren't equipped." "She's 8," I told Detective Harper later when he relayed the scene. "She needs an inhaler twice a year. That's it." When asked about the vacation, my mother fumbled. "We didn't mean to leave her. We just needed space." "You needed cocktails and a beachfront suite," Harper replied, deadpan. "And you got them, while she slept alone in a stranger's house." Hotel guests began to gather near the elevators, whispering, filming. One couple approached the officers, quietly asking, "Did they really leave their granddaughter just to come here?" "Yes, ma'am," Barnes confirmed. "They did." Savannah stood frozen, watching it unfold. Her perfect vacation unraveling with each passing second. Her voice barely carried over the commotion. "What about Jackson and Madison? They're crying. You're ruining everything." The officers calmly escorted my parents from their luxury suite, bypassing the breakfast buffet they'd reserved and the snorkeling lesson they were scheduled for at 10. Back in St. Augustine, I received a short message from Detective Harper. Confirmed contact. Interview completed. Returning to Connecticut under police escort. They weren't handcuffed, but they might as well have been. The internet noticed. One hotel guest had filmed part of the confrontation and uploaded it with the caption, "Grandparents busted for ditching their granddaughter to vacation with their favorites. Family drama goes nuclear in paradise." It was spreading fast, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something close to peace. The day Eliza came home, the house didn't feel the same. Her room was still there, exactly as we'd left it, but the innocence had cracked. The pink, glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling no longer felt magical. Her nightlight flickered like a warning. Still, she smiled when she saw her pillow, her real one, and when I handed her Webster, the stuffed otter she'd taken everywhere since she was 4. She held him to her chest and whispered, "You came back for me. I never left you," I said softly. "Not even for a second." CPS required a final in-person verification at their office before restoring full custody, but Ms. Beltran fast-tracked the process. "We've reviewed the documentation," she said. "You're cleared to take her home, but we strongly recommend trauma counseling for both of you." I didn't hesitate. By the following week, Eliza began sessions with Dr. Elaine Cho, a child psychologist known for her work with separation trauma. After the first session, Dr. Cho asked to speak with me privately. "Eliza shared something today that concerned me," she said gently. She said her grandparents told her, "Sometimes mommies go away and don't come back. That maybe you were gone because she was too much trouble." Those words, they physically hurt. Not just the meaning, but the intention. The cold, premeditated cruelty it took to plant that idea in a child's mind. Dr. Cho saw the rage rise in my face. "She doesn't believe it anymore," she added quickly, "but it's important we keep reinforcing that it wasn't her fault." So I did. Every single day. I rearranged my work schedule to part-time, thanks to my supervisor Jennifer, who'd been quietly championing me since the incident. "Take whatever time you need," she'd said. "Family comes first, especially when they've been hurt." Financially, the change was manageable. Emotionally, it was necessary. We began creating new traditions. Sunday pancake brunches with Kelly, my best friend and fellow nurse, and her daughter Emma. Saturday library trips where Eliza could pick any book, no matter how silly or sparkly. Weekly movie nights with Judith, my ex-mother-in-law, who, unlike my own parents, had never stopped showing up. One night, as we were drawing constellations on a large piece of butcher paper for Eliza's space wall, she looked up and asked, "Are we a small family now?" "No," I replied, placing a sticker star over our heads. We're just the kind that shines brighter with fewer people. She smiled, wide and certain, and returned to her drawing. No hesitation, no sadness. We were rebuilding from the ground up. But this time, everything we laid down was real, earned, solid, and stitched together, not by obligation, but by love. 3 days after they returned from Hawaii, sunburnt, sullen, and still half in denial, my parents stood in front of a judge in a packed county courtroom. I sat 2 rows behind them, Eliza's small hand wrapped around mine like a lifeline. The judge, Honorable Caroline Reeves, was not the kind to be swayed by tears or tailored suits. Her voice was firm, her posture straighter than a steel rod. You are charged with child abandonment, filing false statements to a government agency, and custodial interference, she read aloud. How do you plead? My parents' lawyer, a longtime acquaintance of my father's, stepped forward with a carefully rehearsed plea deal. 6 months probation, mandatory family counseling, community service at a local children's center. No jail time, no record if completed successfully. I didn't fight the deal, because the punishment I wanted wasn't jail. It was acknowledgement, and that came when the judge turned to my mother. Mrs. Rivers, would you like to make a statement? She stood, smoothing the hem of her beige cardigan. We meant no harm, Your Honor. We thought we were acting in the child's best interest. Natalie can be intense. We didn't want to interrupt her shifts. Abandoning a child isn't a scheduling conflict, Judge Reeves replied. It's a betrayal of trust. A child is not a suitcase you drop off when vacation plans come up. My father tried to salvage dignity. We just didn't think she'd overreact like this. But before the hearing ended, the judge offered Eliza a choice. If you feel safe, you may speak. She looked at me. I nodded once. Eliza stood, holding a small piece of folded paper in her trembling hands. She took a deep breath. When you left me, I thought it was because I did something wrong, she said clearly. I thought maybe I wasn't good enough, or that Mommy didn't want me anymore. My mother began to cry, but Eliza didn't flinch. I know now that none of it was true, and I'm trying to forgive you, but I need you to know that what you did made me feel invisible, and I never want to feel that way again. Silence filled the courtroom. Even Savannah, sitting in the back, wiped her eyes. It wasn't the apology I had waited for. It was better. It was power reclaimed. Afterward, my mother reached for Eliza. She stepped behind me instead. My father said nothing. In the weeks that followed, the story faded from headlines. The Hawaii grandparents' case was replaced by newer scandals and fresher outrage. But in our home, the change remained. Eliza smiled more, laughed more, danced around the living room again. And one night, as I tucked her in, she whispered, Mom, I'm not scared anymore when you go to work. I know you'll come back. I kissed her forehead and whispered back, always. We didn't return to the way things were. We created something better. Family dinners no longer included long drives to Palmview or sitting through awkward silences while Eliza picked at salad. Instead, we gathered around our own table, surrounded by people who had earned their place. Kelly and Emma, Judith, who never missed a movie night, even Mrs. Callahan and her husband stopped by one weekend with a basket of Eliza's favorite muffins. Eliza turned 9 that spring. She wanted a space-themed party, so we transformed the backyard into a galaxy. Silver stars hanging from the trees, a rocket cake, and constellation games. Before blowing out the candles, she looked around at everyone and smiled. Make a wish, Space Explorer, I whispered. I already got it, she replied. We're home. And she was right. Home wasn't a building. It wasn't defined by shared blood or old photo albums. It was wherever we were safe, where we were seen, where love showed up, especially when it was hard. My parents still attended court-mandated therapy. Some visits happened with a supervisor present at Eliza's request. Other days, she chose not to go at all, and that was okay. Her voice mattered now. Her boundaries were sacred. Savannah sent a card once. It said, "I'm sorry. I see things differently now." I didn't respond. Some lessons don't need applause, just space to land. I kept journaling every night, not because I needed proof anymore, but because I wanted Eliza to know one day that I chose her every single time. That no vacation, no judgment, no betrayal could ever change that. She was never too much, and I was never unavailable. We were just surrounded by people who couldn't see us clearly until we stood up and made them. So now I ask you, have you ever had to protect someone you love from your own family? What gave you the strength to choose what was right, even when it meant walking away? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there might need it more than you know. And if this journey spoke to something inside you, hit like, subscribe, and stay for more stories about strength, survival, and the quiet kind of revenge that rebuilds everything they tried to destroy. Because sometimes justice isn't loud. It's a child finally falling asleep, knowing they'll never be left behind again.